Welcome, guys. Welcome to a night of TA education. We're going to start with part one for harmonics. And so this is the information that I'm going to be presenting tonight comes straight from Scott Carney's Harmonic Trader Volume 1. He's got 3 volumes. We're going to focus on the first one. And we're going to keep our focus on the Fibonacci ratios and also the ABCD pattern, the AB equals CD pattern, which is this pattern right here. It's kind of like a diamond looking pattern. And this pattern basically is showing a trend. So this one right here is showing a bearish trend or a downtrend, and there's also one that shows a bullish trend as well. So all these ratios apply to each. So what we're going to do, starting out in the beginning here, is we're going to talk about the Fibonacci ratios. So here's the harmonic trading ratios, Fibonacci ratios. So directly derived from the Fibonacci sequence, we have the 0.618 primary ratio, and then we have the 1.618 primary projection. And so those are going to be the key ratios as far as all of the math that we do for all the other ratios. The key thing to take from these primary ratios and primary projection is that these numbers are basically the reciprocal of each other. So in the Fibonacci sequence, when we get to like the 8th or 9th sequence, these numbers here repeat up to infinity. So they never change. So you take the sum of the first 2 numbers, and then for the next sequence, you take the sum of the previous ratio and you add the second number of that ratio to get the new sum for the second sequence, and that just repeats up to infinity. And once you get to the 8th or 9th sequence, you come out to, when you divide like the 8th sequence by the 9th sequence, you get 0.618, and when you do the inverse of that, you get 1.618. So that's where those come from. These primary derived ratios, like the 786 and the 886 and the 113 and 1272, these are the primary derived ratios from these primary ratios. So the math is, in order to get 786, we have to do the square root of the 618. And then in order to get 886, we get the fourth root of 618, or the square root of 786. But I try to remember, square root of 618 is 786, and the fourth root of 618 is 886. Now these ratios down here, like 1132 and 1272, these are the inverse, similar to the primary ratio and the primary projection. If you take 1.618, yes.
All I see is GameStop. Are you talking about a different screen?
I am, yes. Sorry about that. Let me
Okay.
switch that over
No, it's
for,
fine. I thought so, but I was waiting because I wasn't sure.
here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. So here we go, up at the top, primary ratios right here. And then these are the ratios we're talking about right now. 786 square root of 618, 886 fourth root of 618. And then down here, so if the square root of 618 is 786, then for the projection part of the ABCD pattern, or for the projection that you can anticipate the stock will go, you have to, since the math you used for 618 for 786 is the square root of that, then for 1618 you have to do the square root of that, and that's what gets you 1272. So that's why, like, when you have a 786 retracement and I draw an ABCD pattern, the projection for that ABCD pattern will be the square root of the 1.618, which is 1272. So if we were to retrace to 786, then we anticipate that we will project to 1272. Same goes for the 886, being that it's the fourth root of 618. We then have to find the fourth root of 1.618 for the projection. So the fourth root of 1.618 is 1132. So when we have an ABCD pattern that is an 886 retracement, we're going to look for a projection of 1132. If we have a retracement of 786, we're going to look for a projection of 1272. And then we have, all these other ratios down here, these complementary derived ratios. So all this really does down here is it explains where these ratios come from. So the 38 fib, which is relational to the 618, is just 618 squared. As you can see right here, 618 squared equals 38. Then we have the 0.50. And the 0.50, you take 0.707 squared, and that's how you get 0.50. And then if you look at 0.707, in order to get that, we get that from the square root of 0.50, so the inverse. If you look at 2, okay, so 2 is the inverse of the 0.50. So if there's a 0.50 retracement, we get a 2.0 projection. And if we get a 0.707 retracement, we get a 1.41 projection. 2.618. This is a key number you see all the time. And that comes from 1.618 squared. So 2.618, that projection is for whatever the 0.618 squared is. So 0.618 squared is 0.382. So if we have a retracement for an ABCD pattern of 0.382, then we anticipate to project to 2.618. So we're going to continue now and go into the actual ABCD pattern. Because before I can talk about other patterns, we have to understand the ABCD pattern. And the ABCD pattern actually is everywhere. So this ABCD pattern, which is this diamond pattern, if you see here, I'll switch over to my chart. Let's see if I can go into the Dagger Charts channel and look for an ABCD pattern that I've drawn recently. So I know I've drawn a few. So I'll try to find one. Let's see. Let me look at RY, which is the Royal Bank of Canada. And that's the shark. So here's the ABCD pattern. I'll go to the monthly chart. So you'll see here for this pattern, I first identified the ratio. That's step 1. You got to figure out, well, what's the retracement when we reverse? And it says 0.594. So 0.594 is closest to what Fibonacci level? Do you know, Brendan?
What was the number?
0.594. What's the closest fib to that?
618.
That's right, 618. So if we look at right here, there's a table for the retracements for the ABCD pattern. It says for a 0.618 retracement, what's our B to C projection?
1618.
1618. And that's a pretty easy one to remember because this is the primary ratio here, 618, and then this is the primary projection, 1.618. So for this pattern that I drew here for the Royal Bank of Canada, you'll notice my PRZ, where I drew this ABCD pattern to for the projection, is up at the 1.618. So I am projecting that this pattern that dates back to COVID on the monthly chart will take us to 145 before we can anticipate a retracement.
Where's the 618 point? The C or the A?
It's at the D right here.
Oh, okay.
So in order to find the C point, which is the 0.59 retracement, you draw, it's basically with the pattern I have on the chart, it's drawing a fib from the A point to the B point. And that's what's giving us this number down here, because it's measuring this retracement right here.
Yeah, okay, got it.
And then if you were to like flip this upside down, this D point is taking the B point as the starting point for a fib. And you draw the fib from the B point to the C point, and and that's how you get the 1.618 projection up here. So it's basically a mirror when you think about it. So we'll try to find another example. I know I've plenty of examples to look at from what I've charted. Let's maybe look at Chevron. So CVX. Turn this off here and do the ABCD pattern. And I'm on the monthly chart for Chevron. So the Chevron retracement here that we had in September, it shows it's a 30.393 retracement. So if we look back here, our C point retracement of 0.382 would be the closest fib number to that. And it says the B to C projection for that is 2.24 or 2.618. Now mathematically, 2.618 would be the exact inverse of that, because you take 0.618 squared to get 0.382, so I have to take 1.618 squared, and that's how I get 2.618, which is why I have this drawn the way I have on my chart here for Chevron.
So that's the largest one then.
That's right.
Like gain wise.
Yeah, that's a very big one.
Yeah.
If we look at SMCI, which you all know, I've been all over this one for a while. I'm going to show you something interesting here. So SMCI, when I had my initial target, what do you think my initial target was at? So you see this retracement up here, what does that say?
618 basically.
Yep. So where would my projection be?
The 1, 2, something.
Nope.
Oh, for this? Oh, right there it is. It's 2618.
Nope. What was the initial target before I drew it down to 2618?
1618?
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Because 1618, so it was right here is 459. So when we were trading in the 800s, I said, hey guys, I think we're going to go down to 459. And then they did the split, so 45.90 is the same thing. But this was my primary target for this completion here. However, the one thing to note with ABCD patterns is the PRZs, which in this case the PRZ would be 1.618. That's not necessarily the end all be all. That's just where the retracement technically can begin. But if this fails, for every single ABCD pattern, if this fails at this PRZ, we can technically then extend all the way down to 2.618, which is why my final price target is down at $11.60 now, because we lost that 1.618 as the retracement setup for the upside. So the big so what with that is, if we do go to, and I'll take a look at XLC to give you an example, which is the communications ETF. So if I look at this, what was the retracement down here?
I think 886 basically.
Yeah, so then if you look at this chart here, 886, what is the projection for the 886? 113. So when we bounced off the 886 down here, we're trading at $53. My initial target was the 1132, which is right here for the retracement, which is why I had that arrow drawn there. But what did we do? We broke that. That's right. We broke that and we went higher. So because we broke that and went higher, we can technically expand. That's right. We can keep going higher. We can first go to 1.618, and if we break that, then we can go all the way up to 2.618. So whereas most harmonics will end somewhere close to the PRZ, the ABCD pattern can actually expand and evolve from the normal pattern completion all the way up to the 2.618, which is what XLC is doing right now. So
so no matter what the starting fib, it can go to what you just said, basically, right?
yeah, it can go that high, but our conservative target would be the reciprocal of the retracement, which 886 is the fourth root of 618. So the fourth root of 1.618 is 1132. So that would be your conservative target. And if you see a rejection in this case, you can justify a short off that level.
Okay.
Now, one thing I want to point out is if you look at a chart like this, I'm going to just put up APD, air products and chemicals. I have a butterfly here. Inside of this W, do we have an ABCD pattern in there? Do you see an ABCD pattern anywhere in here already?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, right here. So notice how in all W's and M patterns, there are already ABCD patterns, which is why in order to understand how a W pattern or an M pattern works for a butterfly or any other harmonic, we first have to know the baseline of how the ABCD pattern works. So what's kind of interesting here is if you look here, this retracement was about 0.50 down here for this. We'll pretend we're looking at the ABCD pattern. And it says the 0.50, what's the projection for that? 2. So look how high we went. If we see this right here, it says about 2.163. That's pretty close. So that's right. And for us to now, another thing to look at with this butterfly is look at this retracement here. See this 786? So this 786 sets up the projection for the D point from this X point. If you were to draw a fib from X to A, it says 1.272 is right here. And 1.272 is the projection for 786. Because 786 is the square root of 618. And 1272 is the square root of 1.618. So what this tells us here is the harmonics themselves already have their own particular setup, but within those setups, there's other setups like this ABCD pattern, which is why it's crucial to understand these ratios first, right? So The 786 projects to the 1272 as we talked about. This is what a butterfly pattern uses. That's a salient characteristic of a butterfly pattern. If we look at the 618 here, that projects to a 1.618, and that's what a crab pattern utilizes, right? So that's just to kind of give you an idea of why we're starting small with the ABCD pattern, because it's showing us that, hey, if we can understand conceptually the ABCD pattern, then we can understand the big picture when we're looking at these other fibs and why Scott Carney has certain levels for these fibs on his patterns. So if I look at like FCX, actually, no, let me look at a different one here. I'll look at Lin, L-I-N. This is an ABCD pattern. Okay, so here we go. So this is like a 0.43 something. 0.43 something. So it's a
consider that a 38, right?
Right,
It's not a 5-0.
you'd consider it a 38, but the problem is because it's so much higher than the 38, then it means our projection's going to come up short of our 2618 at some point. You know what I mean? So you'll see the high here off this recent rejection is about 2.5. It's not quite 2.618. It basically came up short of 2.618, but that's because this retracement here extended a little bit lower than 38. So the lower the retracement, the lower the projection. Yep, so this ABCD pattern actually looks very correct. Even though it didn't hit our numbers perfectly, the numbers it did hit actually correspond with each other more accurately.
So like slippage, basically.
Yeah, basically like slippage. So if I look at NUE, which is Nucor Corporation, I have a AB equals CD pattern. So what's my retracement I had here?
50.
Yep, it's about 50, so look where I put the projection. About 2, right? But because it's a little higher than 50, I might need to consider turning on my 1.902 fib, which is a special situation fib. So realistically, because this is a little bit higher than 50, the projection actually might end up going a little bit higher than the 2, which would be like...
Right. I have a question. So
yeah.
how we did those things for the harmonic patterns, is there a way to do it for the ABCD patterns, or you can't because they're each different?
Could you clarify what you mean by that?
Where you have like the min and the max on a harmonic, like the projections, for like a shark, say.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say? I know I'm not saying it right.
Like I have it labeled like min, max,
Yeah,
PRZ.
is there a way to do that for ABCD? I guess is my question.
Yeah. Yeah. I could. I just haven't labeled it that way.
So you would have to set up different ABCD patterns for each
correct.
of the initial numbers, like the 30.
Yeah, I'd have to be like ABCD 886, and it would add a lot more templates.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's just something I thought about.
Yeah. No, you got the right idea though. So here's something I want to point out too. Here's Northrop Grumman. And here's something I want to point out with Northrop Grumman. So we completed a deep Gartley pattern that retraced, and we already went down to TP2. But we're bouncing pretty close to 618 right now. So we had a bearish retracement. We're starting to bounce, but what is this bearish retracement possibly setting up? And I have it drawn on the chart.
ABCD.
Right. So you see how this is sort of like 4D chess, right? The W pattern set up bearish retracements, but it's not for nothing.
So would the ABC always start off the C point of the previous harmonic then?
Yeah, wherever the previous harmonic basically reverses. So right now it went to like 0.68 or something, 0.67. So that's not very close to 786 or 618. So I might just hold off a little bit and see if it goes a little bit lower to like 786 or 886. And if I see support come in there, then I'll redraw this to match whatever the projection should be.
Number is, yeah.
Yep. But also one thing that's interesting with this, notice how the take profit levels, these purple fibs for the retracement, are two very specific fibs. One is the 38 and one is the 618. And that's not by coincidence, because the 618 is the primary ratio, and that's the most common ratio in general that you'd find, but the 38 is even more common than the 618 because it's just more conservative in nature. So a lot of times, let's say that the price action, I'll do replay mode here, and we'll just say the price action bounced off the 38. What would I draw for this pattern if it bounced off the 38?
Oh, it would go way high, all the way up to whatever that was, 2 something.
2618.
Yeah.
Yep. Because the 38 is 618 squared, so I would need to take 1.618 and square that and get my projection of this right here. So that's why, like, on the actual retracement, all you're looking for, if you're short on this retracement in particular, same thing if you were long on a retracement on an M pattern, is you want to see what happens off of TP1, which is the 38. If it holds support, you get the hell out of your short and you can justify a long setup. Or if you break TP1, you just let it fall to TP2.
Where are you drawing your fibs to get the 38, 618, and the 886, I guess would be my question. Is that like a larger picture?
Good question. So in order to get, you're talking about the retracement, right?
Yeah, like where are you drawing that from?
Yeah, so that actually begins whenever a retracement ends, and this would be for a different night because of harmonics. We're not doing W or M patterns tonight, but for this, to answer this question, you would draw the retracement from the low of the pattern, in this case the A point down here, all the way to the high of the pattern. So that's where these retracement numbers are coming from, the low of the pattern to the high of the pattern, or vice versa if it's an M pattern.
Okay, so you wouldn't go from A to B on the ABCD, you would go from A to B.
Yep, for the retracement.
Alright.
Good question. Okay, let me go back to the booklet here. So one of the things with the ABCD pattern, as I've just shown, is it's involved with every harmonic pattern. There's normally always an ABCD in every harmonic pattern in some capacity. And then especially at the retracement of the pattern, when the pattern is done retracing, it can set up a continuation move, like what we see here. So let me look at Pfizer really quick, because this is something I had charted. All right. So Pfizer is in the middle of its retracement for this butterfly pattern. But one thing you'll notice is before this butterfly pattern set up, look what happened before it. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had an AB
It could
equals,
have one go up and one go down.
that's right. So ABCD pattern completed. And then interestingly, it retraced 786 from this point here. Because you
It's almost
can,
like a head and shoulders, right? Or no?
yeah, almost does, actually. It does.
Okay, that's what I'm seeing.
But it happens to be a butterfly pattern. So anyway, I just wanted to show you how all of these can kind of tie together. And for instance, I'm not allowed to just draw the butterfly pattern off a random point. Generally, I'd want to draw it down here, but the only way I would avoid drawing this green harmonic down here is I need to have another pattern to draw off of, and specifically the C point of that pattern, which is this point right here. So like if I'm going to draw a new harmonic going forward, I could justify drawing it from this C point down to here like this, and then boom, we have an alt-bat pattern. So I can already see this would be an alt-bat pattern setup. So if we break above TP1 and TP2, then I'm looking at an alt-bat pattern up here, I can already tell you. And why? Because I'm allowed to draw a new pattern off of the C point of a previously completed pattern. It has to be a completed pattern, meaning we have to reverse off the PRZ. But we can get into that at a different session. I just want to focus on the ABCD pattern for today.
Where do you have these books at? We should make like a cheat sheet with all this information on it. Like, I could do it. I can help you. Like set up like. I'll have to look back.
Yeah.
Chat. All right, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be helpful for everybody because like I can memorize it over time, but
Well, I know people have them and they just don't read them. They don't study them. So it's going to take effort. It's going to take work. So he's got a bunch of examples here of different ABCD patterns completing, and he's got a number of them in the book here. You can see 786 projection was down to 1272. Here's another one, same thing. And so that's why, you know, I'll say something like the 786 fib is and the 886 fib, they're both really good reversal fibs, simply because they have these projections tied to them. I'm going to read something straight from the book here, just so you know it's straight from the horse's mouth. So it says here the ABCD pattern is a 4-point price structure where the initial price segment is partially retraced and followed by a move from the completion of the pullback. This structure has been previously discussed in many technical works, and it represents the basic foundation for all harmonic patterns. So that's why we're going over this first. This is the basic foundation for all harmonic patterns. The Fibonacci aspects in the pattern should occur at specific points, which is what we went over. The C point will be a defining level for the completion of the pattern. So what he's saying here is wherever the C point is, like right here, it says about 618, that will be a defining feature of the completion of the pattern, like what I have up here for Pfizer on the weekly. Although the BC projection is critical in this structure, the most significant harmonic number is the exact completion point of the ABCD pattern. So although the C point is critical, the B to C projection is the most significant harmonic number. It's the most critical. It's the exact completion of that pattern. So all of these numbers over here on the right side that are affiliated with the numbers on the left, these are what are the most critical, because these set up an if-then scenario similar to, so these are the numbers that will help validate or invalidate the retracement for the pattern. So this rejection up here for the ABCD pattern in black for Pfizer, that was defining the future price action off that rejection. That was a successful retracement. And to show you an example of an unsuccessful retracement, we go back to like XLC, which we have clearly a 1132 projection for this ABCD pattern, and you can see clearly we've broken above it. So now that we've broken above this, we can assume we will continue higher, and we can continue potentially all the way up to the 2.618 projection up here, way up here. And that's why Scott is saying this B to C projection is critical and the most significant number in the structure of the pattern.
Where are you drawing your fibs to get the extensions? Show that quick.
Okay, so
it's not the same as before, right?
So let me show you here. Give me one sec. Okay, so see this number right here?
Yeah.
This dotted line is drawing a line from the A point to the C point. And so it's saying that the retracement from this level to this level is 87%, meaning wherever it went up, it came down 87% of this entire distance to the left. So with that information, we can assume the pattern start over here. We did the first retracement point from here to here. And that's what's measuring this.
Yeah.
It's a Fibonacci retracement from here to here. So for the projection, now that was for the retracement. For the projection, we have to draw it from here, the B point, to the C point.
Okay.
Because you're measuring this dotted line here. This relationship between the B point and the D point. So a good rule of thumb is, if you're trying to find the retracement, look where the dotted line connects first. That's your first point. And your second point is the point in succession after the A point. So what comes after A comes B. So point 1 is A, point 2 is B. And for this dotted line that you see here, for the projection, you can conclude that the B point is your first point of the retracement. And since you're measuring this, your second point has to be the next one in succession, which is the C point. So your fib would start from the B and be drawn down to the C in order to get this ratio right here.
Cool. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it tells you right there, BC projection.
Yep. So in the AB equals CD pattern, the alignment of Fibonacci ratios within the structure usually manifests specific reciprocal relationships. The reciprocal ratio of the C point retracement of the A to B leg usually indicates which B to C projection is utilized to define the potential reversal zone, or PRZ. For instance, the 618 retracement at the C point typically will possess a 1.618 B to C projection that converges closest with the completion of the ABCD pattern. This reciprocal relationship within the equivalent AB equals CD pattern defines the best PRZ for this structure. So it's defining the best potential reversal zone for the structure. And then it lists what these reciprocal ratios are as follows. So on my example for Pfizer, the very first thing that happened before this butterfly pattern occurred, excuse me 1 second, was this AB equals CD pattern. So what he's saying here is the B to C projection shows the ideal retracement for the PRZ. So it shows the ideal PRZ. So you want to reverse off of the ideal PRZ to validate and justify your short in this case for the retracement, and vice versa if you're trying to go long. The reciprocal ratios help define the pattern of completion. However, the most important consideration to remember is that the B to C projection should converge closely with the completion of the AB equals CD. So, any questions with that?
I'm good.
You're good? I think we'll look at a couple examples and then we'll wrap up for this session. So here's an example of an expansion. We had a 0.56 retracement here. This is the weekly chart for T-Mobile, TMUS. So we should have retraced somewhere below, 2.0 as far as our projection. So 2.0 would have been about right here. 0.56 probably should have brought us down to 1.9 maybe as our retracement. We blew through that, so automatically drew this all the way up to 2.618, assuming it would go up there. It did, and it actually went even higher. It went up to 3.0, and then it finally retraced. If we look at Home Depot,
Now, would that mean that the retracement of that ABCD would be bigger since it extended further? Or that's not like something we would think about there? That makes sense.
I don't think.
If it goes higher when it does retrace, would it make it go more, or you just have to watch?
No, you just have to. All you're gonna do is you're gonna draw the retracement again from the bottom of this A point here, all the way to the top where we start retracing.
Okay.
So all it does is adjust the levels. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Let's see. Oh, here's a good example of something that is currently setting up. So I have IWM.
The PRZ is from your high down to the 114, right? Like in the previous chart, right? Your PRZ would be from the 3 down to the 114, right?
The PRZ would technically be where this pattern completes at 230. So we're above the PRZ, probably at a harmonic optimal price / stop loss zone. But now we're trading below the PRZ and we're trading below the PPZ, which is the profit protection zone, meaning that if we're below that, it opens the door to this TP1 down here.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Good questions. So now I'm looking at IWM, and this is something that is setting up now. I've been talking to people about this when we started reversing off this top here. And the thing I was looking for is this is a cup and handle. And with any cup, you got to form your handle. So I anticipated a retracement here on IWM. And my first target for this retracement, I'm looking for about a 38% retracement, which is down at 213. It went as low as 217, so not quite there yet. But the reason I want the 38% retracement is because that's the minimum retracement I need in order to actually set up an ABCD pattern. So would I care if IWM went below the 38% retracement? No. I'd actually be satisfied with that, and I would follow it. I'd see how low it goes. If it goes to 0.50, then I know my projection will be 2. If it goes down to 618, then I know my projection will be 1.618. If it goes down to 786, then I know IWM's projection will be 1272. And if it goes down to 886, then I know my projection will be at 1132. These are all the ratios listed right here. Right here. Right here on page 45 on Harmonic Trading Volume 1 for Scott Carney. So IWM, I not only have a cup and handle setup, but I can give myself a really good and accurate projection based on how low it actually retraces. The main thing is I want the minimum retracement of a 38% retracement. That's what I'm looking for right now. That is currently down at 213.16. So that's what I'm going to wait for. I'm going to first see how does it react off that. If there's good strength off that, I might go long on IWM. If there isn't strength, I'll let it fall down to the 618 or the 0.50. And I'm just going to track it and see where buyers step in. And then I can draw this ABCD pattern accordingly. That's actually a very good current setup that we're looking at. Very good one. Let me see the status on MU. Okay, so MU, I had a few patterns I had drawn just in case. But you'll see here, I have a pretty ugly looking possibility for MU. I had a 0.41 retracement. This kind of reminds me of SMCI. Except this one projects lower than what SMCI's original pattern did because SMCI had a 618 retracement and it had a 1.618 projection. This one has about a 38% retracement and a 2.618 projection, which is more. So we're trading at $90, and I know it sounds crazy, but this projection's down at 34 bucks. That would take a huge hit for Micron. I personally hope that never works out. But it can. It certainly can. I hope it doesn't, but it can. Now the other thing I have to watch with this is I have a butterfly pattern that goes down to, now look at this setup. So I have a butterfly pattern that sets up off of this pattern here, this previous pattern that Micron had. I had a crab pattern. Notice how I drew the butterfly from the C point of the previous pattern, as I discussed earlier. And you know what's ironic? The butterfly pattern projection is it projects us down to 34.21. Look where the ABCD pattern projects us. The same exact level. So that's kind of terrifying.
What do they make? Chips?
They're semis. Yep. Now there is one more option that could happen, and I'll draw it right now. This is not an ABCD pattern, but just for tonight, we'll talk about what can happen here. So I need a 1132 minimum. This would be a shark pattern. And that would be about 886. But the key thing with this pattern is right here. How low can you go? So for this particular leg here, it says the shark can go as low as the 1.618, which is down at 65. So what's nice is, let's say that MU goes lower, and as long as it holds $65, we can avoid seeing this ABCD pattern that takes you lower, and we can avoid the butterfly pattern that takes you lower as well. So this is another pattern I will have to put on my chart once we see this play out, but it's not playing out yet, so I can kind of leave it alone. All right, I think that's going to end it for tonight. This will be posted on YouTube, so I'll have a playlist for the harmonic mini series that I'm doing. So this would be part 1. The main thing with this being part 1 is the ABCD pattern, as it says here, is the basic foundation for all harmonic patterns. So the thing I would want you guys to study or look back on is to look at the ABCD reciprocal ratios and memorize them, so that you know if you see a retracement of 0.382 that this is your projection, or a retracement of 0.50, 2.0 is your projection, or 618, 1.618 is your projection, so on and so forth. That's what I would encourage you guys to memorize, and then just start drawing them, start trying to identify them on some stocks, post them in the Discord, and I can give you guys some feedback on that. So that's all I got for tonight, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you got questions, let me know.